Georgios, are all those people here to see us?
Yes, Ben. Yes, they are.
It's the Pre-Essen show.
Now, Ben, be honest. Am I the most intelligent person you know?
You are, and I've met me.
It's the Q&A.
Georgios, do you see that in the distance?
No? What?
That is that industrial building, what's famous in Essen and that.
Ah, right, yeah, the factory where they turn all these people into boxes.
Can you see it hoving into view?
No, we're still in a recording studio.
Georgios, you're breaking the fourth wall.
Yes, because, no, this is very empty here.
And I put up a lot of money for that wall, Georgios, and I covered it in wallpaper, and now you're breaking through it.
Yes, I'm very meta.
All right, let's go back to the beginning.
All right.
Georgios.
Ben.
Can you see it hoving into view?
But no, there's a wall there.
Do you know, I think when the murder trial happens... the defence are going to play these recordings, and the judge is going to go, "No, I see what you mean, mate. I mean, to be honest, the 15,000 stab wounds wasn't going far enough, as far as I'm concerned. Let's all go down the morgue and stab the body a few more times, shall we?" Yes, Judge. Stenography. So why are we here, Georgios? Why are we here?
We are recording our Pre-Essen show.
Pre-Essen show.
Which apparently is a thing people understand in the gaming community, which I still find fascinating.
So we'll do what other podcasts do and say... Essen is a huge gaming convention in Germany, because you don't know that, obviously, listening to the podcast.
Clearly.
But yes, it is a pre-Essen show, and because it's Essen, usually in this slot we have a short 10-minute show. We're going to do a bumper, long show for all of you beautiful people to listen to all the Essen loveliness.
Yes, you can pull up to a bumper.
That, again, he comes out with these double entendre jokes, and it another reason the judge is going to go, yeah. Oh, 17th crap double entendre joke in one episode. Double stabs, everybody? Double knives. Everyone gets double knives to stab the corpse with. Nice one. All right, so we're going to open up with, we put out a call on our guild.
Yes.
For people to ask us, because me and you, Georgios, we're grizzled Essen veterans, aren't we?
At some point, I think we might have passed that threshold, yes.
How many years have you been, Georgios?
This might be my 6th or 7th.
Bloody hell, that's a lot. Yeah. This is my 4th.
Oh, a young one.
I know, it's exciting. And they've opened up new halls this year, Georgios?
They've done this like the last 3 years in a row.
It's the Catan Hall. Last year they had this big simultaneous Catan world record thing where everyone played Catan at the same time. And that hall is now open, next to Hall 7.
Right, yeah.
Is now open. And I think they're going to have open gaming.
Really?
And we'll come to this later. So,
wow, I did not know that.
We'll come to this right now. So we put some questions out.
Yes.
Out on the guild.
On the guild.
And the first one to leap in all the way from Poland is Brian Girding, our potential future sponsor, the heir to Pendragon.
Yes. We're still hoping for that huge, recording studio in Pendragon.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been to Pendragon.
Right.
But I imagine Pendragon, it sounds gorgeous, isn't it? Rolling hills, mist,
right.
Dragons.
Yeah, I'm not
holding
sure about the
pens. Anyway, so he asks, what is the difference between Essen and Gen Con?
Oh, I can answer that, actually.
And if I could go to one, which should I pick? So Georgios, you being a grizzled veteran of Gen Con, what's the difference?
Well, one is in the US and the other one is not. And you should go to the one that you're closer to.
Well, exactly. And neither of us have been to Gen Con.
No.
But it seems to me Gen Con is more the standard convention when you think of a convention. So you have lots of panels, lots of shows, you have lots of events. The dealer hall is only one part of it, whereas Essen is a trade show. It's changing, I think.
Yeah, maybe.
But Essen is a trade show. You go there to demo games, to buy games, to walk around, to look at stuff. It's a big sort of huge mammoth supermarket of games, exactly.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, I'm going to spoiler something. Basically, I'm going to spoil my own incompetence. We went to BerlinCon a while back, and I did an interview with one of the guys running BerlinCon. Basically, they talked about how they went to Gen Con, sponsored by the listeners. I'm actually not the listeners.
Take note. Take note.
Sponsored by the crowdfunding campaign on YouTube.
Take note, people.
Basically, they got their trip to Gen Con sponsored. What amazed them was just this wide range of gaming 24 hours a day. You go there, you start gaming, you keep gaming, and you go to another place, you keep gaming there, you sit down, play a new game here, play a new game there, get drunk. There's no time where there isn't a table open somewhere where you can actually play a game. And this, as of now, is not the case in Essen.
No, Essen kicks out at 7. The hall's open at 10. It kicks out at 7.
Right.
Now, what people don't realise, and what you'll hear people say is, and then you have to go off and da-da-da-da-da. But actually, there's actually now developed over the last sort of 2 or 3 years quite a vibrant gaming scene after the show.
Yeah.
So you can go to the Unperfekthaus, you can go to the Motel 1, which is surprising, one of these sort of mid-standard hotels, but it just gets full. A lot of people stay there, you see.
Yeah,
so it
right.
gets full with people gaming at night. People have events there. Modifius had an event there last year, for instance. Okay. That's where I bumped into Matthew Dunstan. Yeah. What I would suggest to you, Brian, is go to Essen this year. It's great.
Yes.
Yeah, walk around the dealer halls during the day, get talking to people and find out what's going on at night. And then there's lots of gaming going on at night. There's lots of drinking and there's lots of debauchery.
Yes, but board game debauchery, so basically people are just going to take meeples and stick them up their nose.
That's right, nose. Okay, so we have Ulf Pearson. He's a Swedish man. I've met him before.
Ah, excellent.
He claims on Twitter that I owe him a beer.
You owe most people a beer, though.
But I don't buy it. I think he owes me one.
Ah, so basically when you calculate, basically it comes out even, right? You buy him a beer, he buys you a beer. You basically both have a beer that you pay for.
No, basically, the way it works in the world, right?
Oh, right, yeah.
Is as a standard, everyone owes me a beer, right?
I see.
That's as a standard. That's just a standard accepted rule of society. Everyone owes me a beer as standard.
Ah, right.
If they buy me that beer...
Yes, you owe them a beer.
No, it's not how it works because they owe me a beer. So that goes down to 0. Okay. But the thing is, the counter resets after 24 hours.
All right.
So everyone in the world, technically speaking, should buy me at least 1 beer a day.
So what you're saying is you have kind of a death wish in which your liver would explode. You are basically Nick Cage and leaving Las Vegas, but you're sitting in Berlin.
So, Ulf Pearson, he says, will there be an official Perfect Information podcast listeners meetup this year, Georgios?
You should use the proper acronym.
People.
Yes, there will be people.
Well, there's a reason we're not doing this, Georgios.
No, yeah, which is?
Well, let's not run before we can walk.
Okay.
Because I would be, frankly... I'd be a little, what's the word, soul-crushingly demoralised, Georgios, if we were to hold a meet-up, and then it's me and you,
and Ulf,
and we're there going, this is good, Ulf, isn't it? Yes, this is very good.
Is that how he talks then?
He's Swedish, isn't he?
Yeah. I mean, you said you met him. Is that?
Yeah, no, I have met him. That's how he speaks exactly like that.
I can imagine, yeah.
And so, did you speak to anyone else, Ulf? Anyone else coming? I don't know. And then you go, what we doing now? Oh, well, I've had the 3 sips of my beer. I'm going somewhere else, away from you bloody sad people. And then we have to have a murder, suicide, mutual masturbation pact, Georgios. And I'm not into that.
But, I mean, I was under the impression that was the point of the meetup. If that's
it's not going to repeat itself, is it? It's not going to be a regular thing if that's the thing.
Well, I know how to cheat.
But no, I mean, there's no official one.
No.
But if we're going to be wearing T-shirts at the show...
Because we are quite tacky.
And so, if you want to, if there's enough desire, people want to get together and have a drink, we'll get together and have a drink sometime. It'll be nice, but nothing official because that scares me a little, Georgios.
Yeah, if you see us walking around with our logo on emblazoned on our shirts, do come to us, say, hi, we love your show, Ben is a dick. Happy to agree with you.
I'm not a nerd, you see, so if you come up to me, I'll go, hey, how's it going? Yeah, great. No, I will sign that. Yeah, oh, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no problem. Like those sort of media twats do.
Yes.
I'll speak in that voice.
But you like your regular speaking voice.
What you don't know about me is when the microphones are turned off, I actually talk like this all the time.
He does. It's really quite disturbing.
How's it going? Would you like a cup of tea, Georgios?
It's the reason why I always carry around a microphone with me. It's just, much more bearable to him talking like normally.
Exactly. Put a microphone in front of me, and then I sound like this
commoner.
Gutter snipe. Anyway, so second question, George. What's his second question?
What is your advice on personal hygiene for Spiel? Actually, I do have advice.
Yes.
I'd have a shower. If I'd have a shower, I'd shower in the morning.
Yeah.
I'd shower in the evening.
Yeah.
All over the land.
Right, that's right. Me too.
Actually, it's a running gag among gamers to talk about personal hygiene and lack of showering. I have to admit, in Spiel, it rarely really has been a problem for me. Occasionally you run into people, you go, I mean, once a week is not enough, but most of the time, first couple of days are fine. Saturday, Sunday, when people are starting to get a little sloppy with their schedules, maybe, but most of the time, shower in the morning.
My tip for personal hygiene is very bloody easy. Have a bloody shower. For God's sake, we're all bloody adults, aren't we? It blows my mind, this constant laughing behind the hand at gamers and aren't they smelly and all. Why are you bloody smelly? I mean, I just don't, okay, if you're a kid and you're wearing a nappy and you shit yourself, well, that's fine. You smell like kid shit. But, if you're a grown adult, just have a bloody shower in the morning, put some bloody deodorant on, some clean clothes. It's not bloody rocket science, is it, Georgios? You know what I mean? It's not like building a nuclear bomb, Georgios. That's hard. You need yellow cake.
I hate cake.
You hate cake?
Yes.
Why do you hate cake? Cake's amazing.
I'm thinking of urinal cake.
All right. I like urinal cake.
I know, but you're special.
It makes the pee bucket smell nicey.
Yes, but we actually have an actual toilet. And we don't use.
I don't have a urinal cake at home.
You ate it? What?
No, public toilets.
Oh, right. Yeah.
You need them in public toilets, don't you?
I try to avoid them.
Public toilets?
Yeah.
What if you're in a place, Essen, for example?
Like I said, I tried to avoid them and didn't actually succeed every time.
Because you've got to get a toilet, haven't you?
Well, I mean, they are selling Club Mate.
Anyway, yes, so have a bloody shower, I think, is the moral of this digression. Okay, so his third question is, what are some useful German phrases for non-German speakers, Georgios?
I always recommend, habt ihr schon den Perfect Information Podcast heruntergeladen?
Yep, that's a brilliant one. That's a brilliant phrase.
A good one.
That means you say that to all the people there.
It's basically it's the opening phrase for getting invited to try out a new unpublished game nobody else has seen.
That's right. Usually by Stefan Feld, Uwe Rosenberg.
Yeah. Or
George Clooney, who I hear is going into the game design arena.
Yes, apparently he's going to be cosplaying as some Munchkin mascot.
That's
around.
Right. Also, a good German phrase that I would recommend is Entschuldigung, kannst du bitte mein Schwanz lecken? Which means...
Could you move to the side, please? You're blocking the way.
Exactly, that's what it means. I'll just repeat that. Entschuldigung, kannst du bitte mein Schwanz lecken? Which means, excuse me, can you move to the side? Just one more time for the people.
Yes, for the people.
I'll break this down slowly so you can memorize it. Entschuldigung, kannst du bitte mein Schwanz lecken? And if you use that sort of 20 times a day, you'll zip through the hall super quick. People will get out of your way.
They will definitely get out of your way. No, but actually, I do feel the need to do an actual useful German phrase. In Essen, you can always ask, ist dieser Platz noch frei? If you're standing at the table wondering whether you can join or not, ist dieser Platz noch frei?
Ist dieser Platz noch frei?
Very good.
I sound like a bloody German. It's so depressing. I've lost my Austrian accent, Georgios.
You really? No, it's not that.
Leider ist dieser Platz noch frei? Is how you should say it.
No. Actually, Germany and Austria have a very, very difficult relationship with one another. What with, expats and all.
So, we go on to Damon, Mr. Wendell.
Yes.
I'm sure there's a copyright issue.
With Arrested Development.
Exactly.
Oh, I see.
Or he is the Mr. Wendell.
Oh, he is the Mr. Wendell.
He's like that homeless fella.
Oh, well.
Who the bloke from Arrested Development gives like $2 a day to. Oh, he's scraping it in, you know what I mean? All this guy from Arrested Development, I'm being all nice and hippie and that. Right. He's getting a couple of dollars a day. I bet Mr. Wendell drives a Rolls Royce, Georgios.
You're really not good with money, are you?
$2?
Yeah, I mean, you do that for a week, you can probably buy a car, you're right.
Probably buy a roller.
Yeah, definitely.
So what's his question, Georgios?
Who amongst your non-friends are you most looking forward to seeing at Essen?
Who's that, Georgios?
I don't have any non-friends. I only have people I have not killed yet.
That's indeed.
No, actually, I don't know. Actually, no, there are a couple of people I only run into at Essen. One of them used to run a publishing company for a role-playing game, if I remember correctly. I think they did the German version of Inspectors, if they're role players among us, our listeners. It's a very, very fun kind of narrative role-playing game that's sort of a take on Ghostbusters. And they did the German localization of it. So him I'm hoping to run into again, because we always only meet in Essen. We used to meet at local again, role-playing conventions, but, we grow older, families start building up, and you don't really go to conventions outside of your city.
They accrete, don't they? Families, they accrete. Like sort of scum on the side of a barrel, Georgios. Families accrete.
Yeah, I'm thinking more like bark on a tree. I'm kind of hoping to run into some of the people we talked with last year, even though we might not have loved all their games. So that'll be interesting. Hopefully new faces.
There's the stupid, obvious answer, which if there are people who listen to this show, it'd be nice to speak to some of those.
Oh, right. Yeah, no, you're right.
For them to say, I thought you'd be better looking in real life. Something like that.
Yeah, we're going to get that a lot, yeah.
And we're interviewing some cool people. And I guess the coolest person we have already scheduled to interview is Bruno Catala, and that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it is.
So we'll get to have a chat with Bruno Catala, record it, and we'll bring it out for you people.
Yes. We're also looking to find people to talk to who will talk to us who are not, big names yet. Like Chris Darsaklis, I think, who's one of the designers of When I Dream. It's one of the games I mentioned on our YouTube video where we talk about the most anticipated games. And I'm hoping to talk with him about his game. It sounds really interesting. It's the game where you blindfold one person and they then have to listen to the rest.
Oh, yeah. Sounds horrendous, that. Sounds horrendous.
This sounds fun, actually.
People are going to be flicking your ears and tweaking your nipples and shit. And that sounds horrendous. Don't blindfold me. Don't blindfold me, Georgios. It reminds me of my childhood, Georgios.
Yeah. I'm thinking there's a lot of trauma there.
Lots of trauma.
I can tell. No, actually, I think it sounds fun. It sounds very funny. It sounds hilarious. And apparently plays in like 10 minutes or something, 10, 20 minutes. Should be interesting. I'm really looking forward to talking to him to hear about his thought process designing this game.
Yeah, and it's one of those things, I guess, you meet a lot of new people at Essen.
Right, yeah.
You bump into a lot of people, and it's just that wonderful thing because everyone's there, It's just that wonderful thing of trawling through the halls, and you just bump into people, and you start talking to people, you sit down, you play with people, and most people you don't really engage with, but occasionally you meet people and they're sound. Probably. Second question, have you considered doing one of those live Periscope / Facebook live video things from there?
I actually, after reading this question, I did consider it, and we did do some Periscope a long while back. And I don't mind revisiting those, but I don't think Essen has free Wi-Fi. It's going to blow my data packet to hell if I
I mean, the thing is what you have to realize, there's no flat rate in Germany. It's the mobile phone contracts are rubbish. My mobile phone is rubbish. But no, we'll think about it. Maybe there's Wi-Fi there and maybe we'll buy the Wi-Fi and then do a live Periscope thing.
Oh yeah, actually, I love the idea. I would totally up for it if we somehow manage to make it work. I'm quite certain that maybe Motel 1 might have free Wi-Fi.
For sure.
Maybe the place I'm staying at, they have Wi-Fi. I might do something from there, but that's just me and
that'd be good. You alone in a flat.
Yeah, me alone. And this is the game.
All right, so, and he finally says a challenge. See which of you can get the best bargain for a nominal amount, maybe 5 buckaroos.
Yeah, no.
I'm going to do that.
Yeah, you do that.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to win it because I know where I'm going to go.
See, my list of things to do, to see, and to play is already stuffed, and I really don't have the time.
This is one of our listeners, Georgios.
Yes,
this is one of our listeners.
Yes.
One of our listeners, one of our loyal listeners.
Loyal listeners.
Asking us to do something. And what do? You spit in his face, Georgios.
Pretty much.
You say, Mr. Wendell, I hate the homeless. I'm going to spit in your face, is what you say.
Pretty much. Basically...
you're not giving him $2. No. You're not the lead singer of Arrested Development, are you?
What I'm thinking is we're just switching roles. I'm going to take on bad cop now, and you do good cop. That'll be fine, right?
Yeah, I am the good cop.
Yeah, totally.
So, we have Craig Johnston, Craigness69, and he asks a very important question, Georgios.
Which is?
Will Tension and Release be performing live? Firstly, it's not just Tension and Release anymore.
Yes, it's...
I haven't got my name yet.
Is it Tension, Release, and Gimp?
That we're not going with that, Georgios. That implies a sort of submissive aspect to my part within the band, which isn't true.
Actually,
I'm a legitimate creative.
You deserve an
person.
article. Tension, Release, and The Gimp.
I'm not going by that name. Will they be performing live? Unfortunately not, because I had to take a sabbatical from the band just for the Essen weekend, because they're in Baden-Baden.
Actually, no. Actually, they are in Berlin. What you don't realize, but what I know, because I live here, is the Venus is actually happening in Berlin right at the time when Spiel is happening.
What the hell is that?
The Venus is the Erotikmesse, which is German for a big hall full of pervs looking at dildos and porn stars.
That's true. And Tension and Release, even though that's not there, they're trying to move away from that milieu.
But it pays so well.
So, one performance at the Venus.
Yeah.
And that, pays for, me to be in the band.
Pretty much, yeah. You're quite expensive.
I am.
Yeah.
Especially considering I have such little talent. And we finally have one more question, Georgios.
Yes, which is?
Barry Dublé.
Oh, le Dublé.
And he asks,
yes.
Hey, old cool blowing me gun there. I'm going up the chimneys today. Get up that chimney, you little rapscallion. Oh, please don't send me up the chimney, governor. I've got the chimney lungs. You get up there or I'll stab you in your face. But I've got the chimney lungs.
Time.
That was an extract there from Charles Dickens' unpublished novel, Chimney Lungs.
Yes, I cannot imagine why it wasn't published.
It's a good one. It's a
great one.
Anyway, he asks, where is it, Georgios?
The answer, it's right here.
In your heart.
Sure.
Go to Essen. It's in your heart, I think your legs, and in your feety wheat, and in the pegs you hang up your clothes with. I love you, baby, and I will take you down the road for chips.
Thank you. Yeah. I got your Essen right here, Barry. Right here.
Right here.
This podcast is sponsored by YOLO-Games.com. Spend your way to happiness with YOLO-Games.com.
And so, Georgios,
yes?
Essen Spiel 2016.
It lies in the future, and we should worry about the future because that is where we'll spend the rest of our lives.
So I want to start, Georgios, by asking you just to give us your general impressions of what you think of what's on offer this year at Spiel.
A lot. I don't want to say traditional offer, but I do feel like there's a wide range of games there. And most notable games seem the type of games you would expect to come out of Essen or out of Germany, out of Europe even.
Well, I think it's really interesting, isn't it? Because last year seemed to me to be... So if you look at this year's Spiel des Jahres,
right.
I think you could feel the ripples of last year's Essen going into it with the games that were nominated. Right?
I agree.
And last year was... I mean, I don't know. I think this might be over-egging it, and it certainly is. But, never accuse me of not being sensationalist. But it seemed to be like the American invasion or the American style game invasion. So the big two
right
that really caused the waves at Essen was Time Stories and Pandemic Legacy, right? And their focus was deeply on narrative, which I mean, and sort of prescribed narrative in which you go from A to B to C to D, right?
Yeah.
Which is quite the antithesis of the European style games, would you say?
I'm not sure I agree with that, but I do agree that both Time Stories and Pandemic Legacy put an emphasis more on the experience of the game, more on what happens outside of the game, or at least over the table, than arguably traditional Euro games would put more emphasis on the mechanics, on the challenge, on the puzzling. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting that this year seems to be the games that are causing the most notice are by, sort of well-known established Euro designers.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm. So I want to bring your attention, everyone here, to Tabletop Together.
Mm-hmm.
They've done a brilliant tool.
Yes.
About Essen, which is all sort of, what's the word I'm looking for, Georgios? Sorts out all the games.
It does.
And you can go through the list of games that are being released. You can sort them for your own, whether you're not interested, up to being super hyped. And they have a top 50 games.
Yeah. And just a quick background. This actually has been a tradition the last couple of years as well. Unfortunately, I don't remember who did it, but somebody else did an excellent app.
Someone from Switzerland.
From Switzerland. I didn't know that. Did an excellent app the last few years, which did more or less the same thing. You could download it. You can sort through the list, collate all this data from Board Game Geek, from Spielbox even, and put it all together for you to browse through, organize as in important, less important, and so on, and help you find your way through Essen. Unfortunately, this year didn't quite work out.
But Tabletop Together took up the mantle.
Fantastic.
And
great job.
So I recommend log on. It's really great. It's free. You have to create an account, but there's no money or anything.
There is money if you want to sort of donate something.
Oh, donate button.
Yes, apparently this is a thing.
You could donate.
Yes, you could donate.
Anyway, so looking at the top 10 games here, right? Mm-hmm. I would say, the top two is Feast for Odin, Great Western Trail.
Yeah, these are the games that most people using this tool have put on the highest rating, or very high rating at least.
And this is, Uwe Rosenberg, Alexander Pfister. These are people who are slap bang in the middle of what you would call Euro design, right?
I agree.
And these are the games that are causing the most hype. And I think what's really interesting, as opposed to last year, is that the hype these games are causing seem to me to be nothing in comparison of, you look at the big three last year.
Right.
Codenames, Pandemic Legacy, Time Stories.
Right.
The hype for those games was huge. There was such, especially at the convention with Time Stories, was so huge. There was so much anticipation. You couldn't get a demo of Time Stories, for instance. It was just absolutely impossible.
Yeah, there's a locked room. There's this container where you could walk in. They locked the door so nobody gets spoiled, and you could see through a window what people were playing, but you couldn't hear anything. You couldn't ask them anything. They did a lot of secretive stuff, which seemed appealing. I have to admit, at this point, it seemed interesting.
But why do you think this year there's none of these big hype blockbuster games?
I think basically, you already said it before. I think both Uwe Rosenberg and Alexander Pfister are smack dab in the middle of Eurogame design. And Eurogame design by its nature is very cerebral, internal kind of thing.
Understated. Less bombast.
Less, maybe, yeah, but it's also less social, basically. And both Pandemic Legacy, even Time Stories and Codenames put the social aspect of gaming to the fore. Codenames with its emphasis on trying to get into the mindset of your team partners. Time Stories very much about the experiential nature of the gameplay, if you want to call it that, gameplay that is. And Pandemic Legacy, the storytelling, the continuing story, the idea that you get together with the same group of people over a longer period of time and play this game again and again to see what happens next. A lot of it is not just individual enjoyment, it's all about group enjoyment. It's all about, because of that, it becomes, it broadens its appeal to more types of gamers.
And you know what's really interesting? I think what this year's Essen sort of lineup of games shows us is the particular peccadillo within board games. Because board games, because of money and things like this, is not something that can marshal its forces super quickly.
Right.
There's not that much money in games, and designing analog games means there's lots of playtesting. Games take a long time to get developed and then produced. Yeah. I think we'll see in a couple of years, the 2015 ripples will come up in a couple of years, where you'll see a lot of Codenamesy clone games and more legacy games, and coming from European producers as much as American producers.
I think you can sort of see the first inklings of that as well, because I did notice far more smaller European publishers putting out party-style games in the sense of Codenames being a party-style game. They're not traditional party-style games. They're very simplistic and kind of silly, but they are sort of mining the area, trying to find new ways how to put a spin on this social atmosphere of gaming. Like one of the games we put on our most anticipated list, I put on it, was When I Dream. It has a very strong emphasis on the social aspect, on the idea of, being involved and not just carefully maneuvering rules, but, just bringing your personality into the game. And if you want to know more about that game, go visit our most anticipated list. A link should be on our guild.
Yes. And I think it's really interesting because it shows a big difference between what you're into and what I'm into.
Yes.
That I'm a lot more excited about this top 10 list of games than you are.
Yes.
I mean, Feast for Odin, I think, is an interesting game, right?
I agree, it's interesting.
Because it's Uwe Rosenberg, for the last few years, has been ploughing this furrow of having games that are much more sort of just there on the table. You can do everything as soon as you want. Because, probably his most famous game is a game of gradual revealing.
Right, yeah.
Agricola is a game in which actions get revealed throughout the game. So you have a limited decision set that expands and expands and expands. But Fields of Arla, for instance, there's everything on the board as soon as you play the game.
Right.
And Feast for Odin looks like a further exploration of this. He seems to, and I'm not a fan. This is why initially I wasn't really interested in Feast for Odin, because I thought, I can choose between 67 actions on my first turn. And I hate that. I like to be led into a game. But the more I look at it, the more I become attracted to it. And the melding between spatial awareness and strategy building seems really enthralling to me. And it's so interesting that I think Uwe Rosenberg, he's doing this. Because Eurogames use the board, but there's no sort of direct connection to where you place things. There's no spatial aspect. And he's bringing that in.
Right, yeah.
And that really interests me in this game. And I think, even though you're not into Eurogames particularly, I think...
Oh, I wouldn't say that.
That's an interesting aspect, right? The spatial aspect.
Yeah, I think I haven't... At some point, I checked out keeping up to date with information on this game. I think I was interested when it was... Then the only thing that was known was that it was somehow based on similar ideas from Patchwork.
Yeah.
And I quite like Patchwork. I think the second game of his that I actually like. And then it just became bigger and bigger. And at some point, I just checked out. It stopped appealing to me because, well, I have a lot of big and hefty games already. Never get to play them. And I'm always, disappointed that I never get to play them. I don't need another one. And there was nothing from the first glimpses that seemed to stand out, that seemed to be unique enough for me to warrant my attention, really. This seems like an Uwe Rosenberg style game where you know what you're getting. If you're into this kind of thing, I think this is right up your alley. If you can either take it or leave it like I do, there's just too many other games that are more appealing, that promise to be different enough to be, well, worthy of being picked up.
What I love about Uwe Rosenberg is the constant iteration and the constant evolution.
Right.
He doesn't go off and do a completely different thing. He constantly reiterates and evolves and changes. And so going along a journey with Uwe Rosenberg in his games is like seeing the development of an idea.
Right.
And I find that fascinating with him. That's why his games are always vital to look at. Okay, now, Georges, I want you to defend something to me.
Go on.
So you're a person who talks about theme integration being important, right?
Yes.
The theme and the setting of the game is vital.
Yes.
Then why should I be interested in a reskin? Why should I be interested in a reskin of a game so obviously I'm talking about Fields of Green from Artipia. And they're taking the Among the Stars, which is set in space where you're building a space station.
Right.
And they're changing it to Fields of Green, which is you're building a farm.
Yeah.
So for someone who's so theme oriented,
right,
why are you interested in this, and why should I be interested in it?
My interest in this game it's more of a curiosity, really. I'm interested in it because I want to see the differences between Among the Stars and this game. And I thought it was also interesting that during the Kickstarter, one of the taglines was, farming has never been so pleasant. And the idea that you promote a game as pleasant was unique, because I know that you, for example, really love tense games and really high stakes games. And occasionally I can enjoy those things, but I generally prefer a more relaxed atmosphere. And I remember I really enjoyed Pursuit of Happiness because of that. And that was interesting that Fields of Green sort of sells itself as a pleasant game and not as a particularly contentious or tense or even complex game. That said, I think that might be a little bit too pleasant for me, because I'm a city boy born and bred. So when you tell me about green fields and farming and, a shed for your pigs and your cows, I do kind of fall asleep and I just lose interest. I'm literally interested in how, if and to what extent this new theme is actually improves the experience or affects the experience. It might not affect the experience at all, which would be a bit disappointing, but that's what makes the game interesting to me. But since there's nothing else there that really jumps out at me, it didn't really make my top 10 list.
You see, I love the countryside. I'm from the countryside originally. I love walking through the countryside. I love pleasantness. I love that sort of that feeling. And of course in Europe, it's only ever a feeling of just being alone away from everything. But in games, I like to do something. And the problem with art being pleasant,
right,
is it always comes across like a Sunday evening drama where the stakes are never particularly high and everything's going to be resolved in the end and it's going to be nice and it's a distraction for 2 hours. That's not why I come to gaming. That's not why I come to music. That's not why I come to films. I want to be challenged and I want to be tense, and then I want that tension to pay off, and I want to come out at the end thinking I've done something that was rewarding. Fields of Green seems to me, if you're marketing something as pleasant, it's the antithesis of what I'm interested in.
Oh yeah, I can see that. I had a good experience with Pursuit of Happiness, which was literally pleasant to the nth degree. So I am willing to at least, give it a passing glance. And maybe there's something that stands out that maybe makes me sit up and go, all right, this is actually worth talking about. This is worth picking up and playing.
So give me, out of the top 10 of these games...
Oh, the 10 only.
Of the top 10, just give me one game that you're most interested in.
Most interested in this, obviously. I'm really curious how it plays. If it's really tense, or if it's just really if it's all about keeping the status quo and sort of plotting your move right. Sounds really interesting. The rest, I don't know. I think most of them are interesting. I think most of them I find interesting as something to talk about, but except for Innis, none of them are games that I'm eager to own.
The Great Western Trail jumps out at me for a couple of reasons.
Yeah.
One, it's Alexander Pfister, and he's good. And, we have our issues with one of his games in particular, but that's nothing to do with the design of the game particularly. I just like this idea of Europeans embracing sort of old America. And I'm very interested to see what they make of that, and whether, I would like to speak to Americans about this, whether this bears any relation. Because there are two games that jump out of me that deal specifically with America. You have Great Western Trail, and you have a game that we've played extensively, which is Railroad Revolution.
Right, yeah.
These are both games that are talking about the formation of the United States, right? This country in its embryonic form, and what it takes to knit a continent together into a nation.
Yeah, okay.
And I don't think Railroad Revolution deals with that explicitly, but those sort of thoughts are evoked when
in the background. Yeah.
And Great Western Trail does this, and is seeking to do this, and I think that's interesting when the Europeans want to embrace that sort of America.
Well, yeah, I think to our non-German listeners, that might be interesting to know that there is a tradition in German literature. There's one author in particular, Karl May, who was very, very widely read in Germany in the past. It's I think, not children's books, but young adult books, basically. It was written in the 1900, I don't know. And he was basically writing these fantasies of the Wild West, having never actually been to the US. These fantasies of Native Americans, proud Native Americans and their allies and the evil industrialists trying to sort of steal the land from the Native Americans to build the railroads and so on and so forth. It was very, very, let's be honest, very, very kitschy. But they did appeal to this romanticized notion of what the US was like, the North America was like, and how there was these proud nations and so on and so forth. So I do feel that if we're looking at Great Western Trail from an Austrian designer, I do feel he's drawing a lot on this fantasy, on this Karl May style fantasy of the US. And funny anecdote, this game used to be on my watch list for Essen as well. I was sort of following along what were the information that came out. And then they released the rules for the game. I think 12 pages or something. And downloaded it. One of the thousands of people who downloaded it, opened the first page, and all I saw was blocks and blocks and blocks of text. And I couldn't stop giggling, and I closed the tab again, and I kicked it off my list because honestly, I don't know. I find it hard to put into words just why I find it so absurd to sell a game that comes with blocks and blocks of text and has nothing to its hook other than you do these kind of stereotypical things in the Old West and you score victory points. If you do this, you get a multiplayer. If you do this, you don't get a multiplayer. It's like nothing about this seems sort of tells you something about the joy of play. Nothing promises to be fun.
But that's just so bloody wrong, though. You're so wrong about this, and you're so wrong about this all the time. It is implicitly about the joy of play. This is why these kind of games are just better, because they're not trying to sell you something that's antithetical to play. They're selling you pure play. That's what it is. Getting these things to work together as a machine. That is play. Not reading crap on a card about tentacles or something. That's not play. Rolling dice, leaving your entire thing to the whim of chance. That's not play. Putting components together and allowing those components to move forward with your prompting. That's play. That's enjoyable. I think you're very uncharitable to things like this. It's absolutely the spirit of play. Might not be your thing, and that's perfectly fine, but to say that is absolutely uncharitable. And based upon looking at a wall of text that you haven't read is very uncharitable, no?
Well, it's the first impression. There are 640 games there. I need to go by first impressions. And my first impression was that it's going to be a lot of rules to maneuver. None of these rules seem particularly unique and it just seems, rearranging the same puzzle pieces. I think, again, I said it before, if you, as you described it, you're putting these things together, if this creates some sense of joy for you, that's fantastic. And this is the type of game you want. It does not for me. It's not enough for me. And so Great Western Trail sort of was pushed off my list.
And no, just to close on Great Western Trail, what I'm interested in, and what always interests me, is that someone from a collective society working on a topic that is about rugged individualism is always interesting. And how this game will jar with our conception of what America is and what Americans' conception of what America is going to be really interesting, I think.
Actually, one game I do want to talk about, because it's fairly down on the list, but I'm a little surprised that it's not getting talked about more, not necessarily because I think it's so great, but because I assumed it would be talked about more, considering last year's big release was Pandemic Legacy, is Pandemic Iberia, and I think there's also Pandemic something
Reign of Cthulhu.
Yeah, both of these are sort of variations on the Pandemic idea, Pandemic game, basically house ruled Pandemic games, but at their heart. And Pandemic Iberia apparently is coming out in a limited print run, allegedly. Depending on how well it sells, it might suddenly get another print run. Who knows? So, what do you think Pandemic Iberia is not getting talked about?
Well, because I think, especially at Essen,
right,
people are craving the new. Mm-hmm. And I also think there's a suspicion within the hobby game world where they try to ape the mass market world. And this whole pandemic franchise thing seems to me like a movie studio milking its most successful product.
Oh, right, yeah.
And I think people are suspicious of that. And I personally am suspicious of that. And I think one of the great things about Pandemic is its theme, is this sort of modern theme where you're destroying diseases. I don't think there's any place for Cthulhu in that. I don't think there's any place for weird historical settings. It doesn't turn me on, and I think that's probably why it doesn't turn the rest of the people on, because you have a feeling of this company doing something simply to make the money, and that's not what the hobby game market is about, right? It's about innovation, it's about DIY, it's about that whole thing of you can meet people who you really admire, and when it becomes corporate and when it has that sheen over it, you just think, I think people reject it. And I like that aspect.
I think the distinction between Reign of Cthulhu and Pandemic Iberia is quite interesting, because Reign of Cthulhu, I would agree with you, seems like milking a franchise. And I don't mean to disrespect the designer, because I'm sure they put honest work in there and they did try to make the best game they could. But the fact that it's Cthulhu and the fact that Cthulhu's in the public domain, and it's probably the main reason why you see so many Cthulhu-themed games nowadays. It does seem a bit strange, seem a bit, on the cheap side. And I do agree that the impression that this is a company trying to milk its most popular franchise comes across there. But I do not feel the same way of Pandemic Iberia, because I do kind of like the idea of historical settings, even if it's about pandemic, because again, I haven't read too much into it. I apologize, but it is about setting up clean water support. I think clean water lines. It is about building up the infrastructure that allows medicine to sort of contain diseases. And I think that is interesting. I think that could be really exciting. And I'm very, very surprised that nobody seems to care about this game. And I'm not sure if it's so much about a company milking the franchise as it is. There's just not enough of its unique hook. I mean, as embarrassing as it is, Cthulhu games still hold large sway over gamers. It seems strange that something like Pandemic Iberia, which is historical, which tries to set a working system into a historic period of time in a maybe not particularly familiar area of the world, in this case, Spain. I don't know. I do feel it's interesting, and I find it difficult to get any information out of the game. And all I actually do find out is that it's a limited print and I should get it right now. And that's, I think, the main reason that sort of puts me away from this game.
Well, that sounds to me like they've printed it, it's done nothing, and they've got, oh God, we got to get rid of this albatross from around our neck now. Get it now, limited print run.
Yeah,
because
that
nothing's a limited print run if it's selling, is it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's true. And I think there's nothing wrong with that. I think, there's another point I wanted to mention. I don't think there's anything inherently wrong with the fact that the board game industry is an industry and that they are willing to sort of, I don't want to say exploit, but sort of make the most out of a profitable franchise. I think we already have an established pattern in how games do milk their customers by way of expansions. In the fact that we now have a publisher who's going for, all right, we have this working concept and we just do variations of it and set it in different themes, different settings. I think it's viable. I think it might be interesting. And I do think Iberia is more interesting than Cthulhu. Yeah,
it's viable, but should you do it? There's part of the reason I love the board game world is that it has this, on the side of the producers and on the side of the publishers, it has this hobby aspect. The fact that people are accessible, and not just accessible to the people who are fans of their work, but accessible to people from other companies. That there is an absolutely, free interchange of ideas, and people who work for one company are friends with people who work for other companies, and they show each other prototypes. And that is a wonderful thing. My concern with the huge corporate professionalism of the game, and this might just be me screaming against the tide here, but that will stop, and you'll see lawsuits, and you'll see people not revealing their rules online before the game comes out for fear that someone's gonna steal it, and then there'll be a lawsuit and defamation of character and all of that, and that is not something I want to see in the hobby.
I think it's interesting because a few days back I read a blog article by Bruno Faiduti where he does talk about Essen coming up and so on, and one of the things he mentions, even though he also sort of mentioned that he's been talking about it for years, is this commercialization of the industry, and the fact that talk amongst designers or talk at Spiel moves from game design ideas to sales figures. There was a very evocative image, this idea of people getting together year after year, and where they used to talk about these great new ideas, they're now slowly but surely talking more and more about sales figures. And to some extent, I think this is a necessity if you really want to have a hobby, a leisurely pursuit that appeals to a great number of people. The only way to support it is to sort of have an industry that's actually thriving. But I also, and I think he would agree with you, maybe not to that extreme, but he does seem a little worried about the fact that it becomes more professional, it becomes more about numbers and less about the content itself.
I like the idea of this hobby still being art.
Right.
And what I want to see is commercial success facilitating that. I want to see CGE with the ludicrous success of Codenames facilitating them still making these great heavy Euros or these quirky games that develop new ideas.
Right, yeah.
That's what I want to see. What I don't want to see is that commercial success then leading to the conservatism that commercial success leads to.
Well, but you have the same... Don't you have a similar situation in movies? Don't you have a similar situation?
This is the point.
TV even and
absolutely.
And
this is what I'm talking about with Pandemic. It's this feeling that you're just spewing out this stuff to capitalize on the success of your favorite property. And I don't want games to do that. And I mean, everyone talks about the inherent, problems with Asmodee owning everything. I still don't know which side of the fence I sit on regarding that. But what I have seen is that feeling that it becomes more about profit maximization, less about creative output. And that's a concern. And it might be bullshit, but I hope that in the future I hope the innovation comes from the big names as well as the little boutique people. Yeah. That's my hope.
Yeah, I kind of agree. I think it's inevitable. I think, to some extent, I think this tension between commercialism and, I guess, artistic pursuit is always going to be there. I don't know. To be honest, generally, considering how little I know about these things, I'm still leaning towards Asmodee not being the best influence, or at least the company behind Asmodee not being the best influence on the industry.
Well, it's interesting when everyone talks about Asmodee. What do they talk about? Oh, the game's going to get more expensive and blah, 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 blah. Oh, does that mean think people are going to close down. That's not the worry with me.
Yeah.
The worry is that they will implement a corporate style guide that says the goal of what we're doing is purely financial. That's the worry. When companies get this big, their spirit is taken away. Starbucks is a perfect example of this. The coolest coffee shop in Seattle becomes this massive, lumbering, soulless corporation. And that's a worry. And I hope that tabletop gaming, to some degree, doesn't have that huge explosion, because if it has the huge explosion, then what you will have is a flattening of artistic creation.
Oh yeah, it'll be interesting in a couple of years to see how, when inevitably the bubble is going to burst, at least slightly deflate, things are going to change, publishers are going to disappear, and not just because they've been bought out. It's going to happen. I think publishers naturally just occasionally retire. That's just the way things are, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. But I do kind of expect at some point, maybe next year, maybe in a few years, a very harsh cut down. And it'll be interesting to see what happens then.
Okay, I want to talk about one more game before we sort of wrap up, and why we're not excited about it.
Okay.
And that's Codenames Pictures. Because last year we were incredibly excited about Codenames.
Yes.
And the thing about Codenames is it completely lived up to all that excitement for me. I think Codenames is a work of genius.
Yeah. No. It's a fantastic game. I think its longevity in my collection and the way I can play it with everyone, and it appeals to everyone. It tails itself to a group, does point at there being something incredibly valuable in this design, yeah.
So why doesn't Codenames Pictures draw you in the way that Codenames does?
I find it hard to put it in words, really, but maybe that's the problem. Words. I think Codenames would have been fantastic just with a new set of words. But the other thing is that while the illustrations are interesting, I guess, I think the first, pretty much looking at the pictures and trying to put yourself into the mindset of trying to describe them sort of opens up the reason why my excitement has lessened. Because it does not seem, as one would have expected, easier. It seems much more difficult. Instead of it sort of moving beyond the language barrier, which the original has, which I think we've talked to people who did have trouble actually enjoying the game because of the language barrier, because of the lack of shared cultural background. If you don't have that shared cultural background, Codenames is a really, really difficult and really dull game. And now we're moving into something that does not have a specific culture attached to it. You're not looking at pictures of a specific type. You're looking at these fantasy pictures that sort of mix together two separate ideas, like a ball with tentacles. I don't know. I don't really remember what's on them, but it's usually something that seems a little off, little things that aren't supposed to be together becoming an object, so you can sort of move into different directions in how you describe it. But at the end of the day, it just becomes really, really difficult and challenging in a way that playing Codenames with words just wasn't.
You see, with me, firstly, the bloom's off the rose. You know, I've played Codenames loads of times. I'm not going to be excited by another iteration of Codenames. But also, it's that thing of, I love that, because I live in Berlin with a lot of people from different countries. Part of the beauty about Codenames for me, and especially with the words, and I usually play it in English, is that mining of shared culture. Part of the goal of being the clue giver is to try and give a clue that will appeal to the Swedish guy and the Italian guy and the American guy and the English guy, and using these words to connect each other and mine that shared cultural identity. And there's something about the connotation of words, the 50 different offshoots that you get from a single word is so enthralling and interesting and simple and pure. And Codenames Pictures just seems to me to be a childish facsimile of something that was so great.
Yeah. Do you think it would have worked better if they hadn't actually used these fantasy pictures, but maybe actual works of art?
Well, I think for me, there's a purity of the words, and I think we're coming away in our society, away from words, much more into images. And I think something that focusing on words is just so appealing to me and so refreshing and new that I think the whole picture concept doesn't appeal. I liked it when it was the DIY people using Dixit cards, but I never felt compelled to do it myself. Okay, so to finish, Georgios.
Yes.
I want...
In finish?
I don't know what that means.
do we do it in Finnish?
Oh, in Finnish, in the language?
Yes.
I mean, I would. I mean, I speak it, obviously.
Obviously,
I mean, I speak all the languages.
All the languages.
But I just don't want to distance our non-Finnish listeners.
Apparently, there's some bad blood between the Finnish and the Russians, and we might not want to, go there.
Right, exactly.
Since we're, deeply entrenched in Russian media.
That's it. I mean, what you can't see, listeners, is behind my head is a rather beautiful rendering of poutine.
Yes.
The Canadian food stuff, which I can highly recommend. It's very nice. I had some when I was in Canada. It was lovely. So I want two things.
Right.
One, what are you most looking forward to that's not games?
Ooh.
Secondly, a indie sleeper hit. It can be off your top 10 list if you want, that people should go to because it seems really interesting.
Okay, what I'm most looking forward to, strangely enough, are the conversations with other gamers about what they've seen, what they were excited about, what they played, and how, what it felt like. Basically, this is something I really enjoy when you sit down in Essen, the table with people you don't know, you just want to try out the same game. And then after the game is over, you enjoyed it, you didn't enjoy it, doesn't matter. I always ask them, what else have you seen? What else have you played? And it's really, really exciting to hear them. Well, some of them are traditionally boring. I just go, I played the Rosenberg game. It was good. But some of them are actually exciting. Some of them are excited about what they've played. They're really, really happy about this new game they bought. It was really, really great. It's a new find. It's rarely a game you expect to hear. I've heard of a game called Treasure Hunter, which I've never heard before. I think it was called Treasure Hunter by Richard Garfield, published by Queen Games. Never heard of that game before, but the way they described it to me just sounded really, really fun. I love these moments where you just run into somebody, complete stranger, and they sort of point out a game to you that you've never heard of, that just wasn't on your radar. Those are the moments I'm most looking forward to. Kind of game related, but then again, it's a games fair.
I don't really play games at Essen, right? And
you drink, right?
I do drink. I am looking forward to the whole thing of it. I love the getting on the train in the morning. I love the arriving at the accommodation and putting your shit down. I love the going into town on the Wednesday night and going to the Unperfect house and meeting the people with all their prototypes, and everyone's just, descended on this, and there's people from South Africa, and there's people from America, and there's people from Denmark, and there's people from Germany and England and all of that. Then I love that first day, and this year's going to be really unique for me because I've got a press pass. I get to go in the first morning at 9:30 before anyone's in, so I get to walk the halls when it's silent and then see the people come in. And then I love the going outside and taking a breather. And this is really weird. What I love is the fatigue. By the Sunday, I'm dead. And I interviewed Matt Leacock last year on the Sunday, and I could barely focus. I caught a cold on the Thursday, and I could barely focus by the Sunday. But there's something about that sort of actual physical destruction that is so affirming that you've done something.
Yeah.
And if you've never been to Essen, go. It is just glorious. And I'm sure Gen Con is the same in all of these conventions, but there's something about the hugeness that is just so rewarding and invigorating. And you leave Essen and you go home. I go home by train and I fall asleep on the train, and then I get home. And then 2 days later, I'm just like, I want to be back at Essen again.
Yeah, exactly. That's it. Yeah, that's the worst.
Just amazing. Okay, and so to finish up, give us a game.
Again, I love cheating, so I'm going to do that. I'm going to mention this game I mentioned before, When I Dream, because of all the games that are on my top 10 list, this is probably the most unique, I guess. Well, others are interesting as well, but this is really quite unique. Again, the blindfold, but just the idea of getting clues from players, trying to piece them together, figuring out who's giving me an honest clue, who's giving me a dishonest clue, and the idea of there being people trying to sort of trick you, trying to be honest with you, and then apparently there's a third party that's trying to balance the two. It's really sounds really interesting and unique, and the fact that you can end up with the dreamer, the person with the blindfold, trying to retell their dreams based on the clues they sort of picked up. It just seems really unique, strange and unique. And I'm going to push my number one game because this is really, I'm really getting really excited about this game. Unicornus Nights by Seiji Kanai, and let me not screw it up again. It's Kuro, who did The Ravens of 3 Sahashri, and Seiji Kanai, who I don't think has ever done any game at all.
I've never heard of him.
No, never heard of him. Anyway,
I keep getting billet doux from him, though.
A what?
It's French for love letter. I was doing a joke, Georgios. Billet doux is French for love letter, Georgios.
Ben, I told you before, leave the jokes to the professionals. That's what we pay them for.
Okay, tell us a joke.
No. Anyway, just quick word about Unicorn's Knights. It's a co-op game where you try to help the princess reclaim her castle by paving the way for her to go there and not, face unsurmountable odds, not, get lost, and you're playing support characters for an NPC. And that sounds kind of cool.
Yeah, for me, it's my number one game that I'm going to push just because I like games that have interesting ideas. And I like games, especially at Essen, where there's so many that seem just freaky and weird. Right. So this is a game that is based upon a cycle of poems that was written by the designer. Mm-hmm. This is They Who Were Eight. And in this game, from the description, you have 8 Greek gods, and each player is given 2 Greek gods they have to act as spin doctors for, essentially. And what you're trying to do in the game is you're trying to push forward the gods' positive characteristics and hold back their negative characteristics. Mm-hmm. So you can get the most worshippers. You can make the god most appealing. And what this seems to me is what you are, is a spin doctor or a press officer for the political party. It's just the political party happens to be Zeus or Aphrodite, and that's what you're trying to do. And that appeals. And the fact that it's based on a cycle of poems just makes it seem freaky and weird. And you really should go to what I think is the most exciting publisher at Essen this year, who is Ludi Creations. They've got a number of games that seem really enthralling, really interesting. They're really pushing the interesting thematic thing. And so go and see They Who Were Eight. This is what you go to Essen for the weird and freaky. Yeah. And this year, there's a big Chinese presence. And the 2 previous years, there's been a big Korean and Japanese presence. Yeah. And it just shows that even though I do have suspicion about the big publishers, the hobby is now breaking out across the world. Mm-hmm. And it's almost as if we are witnessing the age of early radio, where it's not just...
Is that why we have a podcast?
Exactly.
I see.
Whereas the hobby is now bouncing across the world to all of these various far-flung places, and they're making these games shot through the prism of their own experience, and then they come back to us and we go, isn't this brilliant?
Well, to be fair, I mean, that's just, your colonialism showing. I think all those places have a strong gaming culture, but because these are fairly specific to the countries, they have different emphasis. I think the European culture obviously is fairly, or German gaming culture is very different from, say, the Asian culture. I think the Japanese culture, I've played some of those games, and those games have a very strong emphasis on luck, random chance, or even fate, if you want to call it that.
But not anymore, though. But not anymore. That's the point.
Yes, but what I'm saying is that's where they're coming from. It's not us bringing the games to them and now they're picking them up.
I'm not entirely sure. I think what they're doing is they're taking the standard mechanisms from American and European game design, and they're shooting them through their own particular prism.
You know what? We actually do have some interviews in Essen, and I'm going to ask people. I'm going to, if we find some Korean designers, some Japanese designers, these are the questions I'm going to ask them.
So, anyway, that's us.
Yes.
Pre-Essen.
Pre-Essen. Post-Essen, we're going to be hoarse and probably, homesick. No, wait, Essen sick.
Essen sick.